Typhoon threat growing for the Philippines and Taiwan, and Don is a hurricane on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest from around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for July 23rd. Back in action here, and we have Hurricane Don, which has recently been upgraded by the National Hurricane Center, likely peaking right now, and Tropical Storm Doksuri, which is gradually strengthening and is a building typhoon threat to East Asia. Code orange for that right now, and 31 storms to our tally this year. Day 53 of Atlantic hurricane season. We've got Don, of course, which is moving slightly east of north. And we've got an area of interest still active in the central Atlantic at 30% right now, but the main story in the Atlantic is that we've got our first hurricane of the season. In the Eastern Pacific, nothing of interest now that we've seen the last of Tropical Depression 4E, which turned into a remnant low yesterday. But in the meantime, nothing else following in its footsteps. In the Western Pacific, Doksuri is gathering pace and strength, not moving very quickly though, as a matter of fact. It's gradually moving west-northwest. We've got a 40% area of interest behind it for another system that could end up forming and becoming a significant storm, so the conveyor belt is well and truly in motion there in the Western Pacific Ocean. In the Indian Ocean, nothing of interest now. We did mark a few days ago a small area of interest off the coast of eastern India, but signs have weakened once again and we've dropped it for the time being. Last 24 hours of satellite imagery depicts a few little areas of activity. India's gotten a lot of rain, as a matter of fact, and parts of Central America as well. You can also see Doksuri there off the coast of the Philippines, quite far to the east, and Don's impact is very little on that graphic. But here it is in actual terms on satellite. You can see here it's small size, but to be honest with you, it really is looking good as it moves towards the north, towards north-northeast eventually. The problem with it being only a category 1 and not stronger than that, 75 mile per hour winds, is that the convection isn't particularly deep. The eye wall isn't particularly large, and it's only just managed to get this shape going, but it does look good. It reminds me a little bit of Hurricane Alex. It also reminds me slightly of Hurricane Lee in 2017, although Lee was a little bit larger, had a more filled out eye wall, and was obviously stronger, reaching category 3 status. But this one looking good right now, Don, and it's gradually moving north-northeast eventually and will stay clear of Newfoundland. And you saw its small size. On the other hand, here is Doksuri, a very large system, gradually moving towards the sort of northwesterly direction. Western side looking bare. It's the eastern side that's got all of the activity, large amounts of convection into the -80s, and a big storm building there. Eastern Pacific sea surface temperatures continue to look decent, over 30 degrees off large parts of the coast of Mexico. The warm waters are extending a little bit further offshore, but there's still work to do in the open waters. Gulf of Mexico is really a hot spot in the Atlantic now, south of Louisiana, well above 30 to 32 degrees Celsius, and that extends all the way through the Florida Keys towards the Bahamas. The Gulf Stream, above average right now, has also helped Don reach its hurricane status. The western and central Atlantic also looking good. Western Pacific, a few spots there of over 30 degrees Celsius, getting close to 32, and 1 or 2 spots there in the open ocean off the Philippines. Temperatures very warm as well for Doksuri, moving up towards Taiwan. Only a little bit above average, but it certainly is looking good over there. Bay of Bengal is around 30 degrees off the coast of West Bengal, a little bit lower in the rest of the basin, and in the Arabian Sea it's hit and miss there right now, as is often the case at this time of year. Southwest Indian Ocean is well off the boil, of course, for its winter period now. Mauritius holding about 25 degrees, and the Australian region, lots of the coastline there failing to get the 26, except the area around Darwin. South Pacific also losing its flair a little bit further. Fiji, most of the islands now holding, just struggling to hold 26. Here's the anomalies compared to average. Yellows and reds are above average, the blues are below, a slight cold anomalies off Australia and in the eastern Pacific, but it is starting to close in now. In the Gulf of Mexico and eastern Atlantic, very much above average over there. Some parts of the eastern Atlantic possibly over 3 degrees above. The El Nino effect is becoming quite prevalent in the equatorial eastern Pacific there, and that could enhance things later. Oceanic heat content very good in the Caribbean Sea, through Cuba into the Gulf of Mexico and around the Bahamas, and also a few spots in the Gulf Stream as well. Off the coast of Mexico, some good amounts there too, so systems will get a lot of energy if they are trailing close to land. Out at sea it's a little bit quiet though. The Western Pacific also looking very good there, with high amounts continuing. This is Don's future then, mapped out before us, and we expect weakening of course before it starts to turn further towards the east eventually, and it could go on to affect Western Europe with storm force winds, not tropical of course by that point, but it could be one of those that enhances a series of windstorms that have been affecting Western Europe over the last few weeks, somewhat unseasonable. Of course, as it turns post-tropical, it will balloon up in size as well. Doksuri doesn't need any help with that though. It's likely to strengthen quite rapidly now over the next 48 to 72 hours and should reach Category 4 status before reaching Taiwan, probably weakening a little bit before landfall and then into China. If you've been following forecasts over the last few days, this has been a movement towards the west compared to previous forecasts, which puts it more in line with the ECMWF. I think this is a decent forecast, and that next system already following in its footsteps, becoming a typhoon within day 5. Looking at the rainfall projections over the next 7 days, the GFS has this in mind. It takes the storm, of course, as you can see, just clear of the main island of Luzon, but through the Batanes Islands and then onto Taiwan. Some very high amounts of rain projected now from this, and a massive amount over Mindoro there. For some reason, I'm not sure exactly what that is, whether it's bands from the storm, but that's 61 inches there. I don't know whether that is an issue in terms of the model not doing it properly, or if that's actually true. Anyway, over Taiwan and the Batanes Islands, even so in that area, getting up towards 28 inches of rainfall there as well. That is 700 millimeters, and possibly a few amounts higher than that in Taiwan. Reminds me very much of Nipatak in terms of those rain values. In the longer range, this isn't the current invest, but the GFS has something else possibly lined up in the central Atlantic between day 5 and 10. 31st of July there, a small tropical cyclone starts to form in the eastern Caribbean and has a very short life as it moves on into Hispaniola. For those who were wondering, the GFS and most other models aren't developing anything out of the current Invest 95L. National Hurricane Center have dropped their chances slightly, but they still have 60%, which in my opinion is still too high. In the Western Pacific, of course, we have Doksuri dying out over eastern China then, and then this next system, which is much smaller but still gets quite strong, especially towards the later part of its life as it stalls near Okinawa into the eastern China Sea, and then possibly towards Japan by the end of that 10-day period. And that could also get to Category 4 status on this model run. And of course, intensity predictions are quite difficult. They could exceed that by quite a bit, or they may underperform. That's all the serious stuff done. You can take a look at the Force 13 merch store whilst you're waiting, and scan the barcode on the top right. See all of our products, full season individual storm animations on your request, and are still waiting for Hone t-shirts, still on full display. Well, in the silly range, this typhoon continues then. Where does it go? Its general movement, it actually slows down and actually turns. It goes back the way it came. That's a little bit of a shocker there, and back into China near Shanghai, very close to where Doksuri lands. And then behind that, potentially 3 other systems forming there in a big soup mess over the whole Western Pacific Ocean, extending out towards the Central Pacific there, but they'll all be in the Western Pacific Basin. So all of those systems there, fascinating to watch, but that is extremely long range and may not occur. You can talk about all of this on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13 for tropical weather and general weather chat with weather watchers from around the world. On this day, Texas might remember the arrival of Hurricane Dolly, which peaked as a Category 2 in 2008. Can you believe it's been 15 years since even this storm? Tropical Storm Genevieve was also active in the eastern Pacific. Fausto was dying off a little bit further out to sea. I think there were one or two Western Pacific storms that had just died off at this time as well. I think it was Kalmegi or Feng Wang, maybe both of them. But Dolly was the main subject, making a Category 2 landfall just north of Brownsville. Back to today then. Our first hurricane in the Atlantic, and the next name on the list is Emily. In the eastern Pacific it will be Dora. And in the Central Pacific, of course, we are still waiting for Hone. 31 storms so far this year. We are code orange for Doksuri. And there it is. The next name is Kanun. And in the North Indian Ocean, the next name on their list is Tej. 92 storms on average every year. That's an average from 1960 to 2020. And I think we may still be a little bit behind at the moment, but we do expect a lot of storms in the next few weeks now. Australian region, next name is Jasper. Southwest Indian Ocean will start with Alvaro next season, and the South Pacific's next name is Lola. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.